Hi there. My name is Dr. Vivian Linden, almost doctor in a week. I'm a licensed acupuncturist. I'm about to be a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and I'm a nationally certified Ayurvedic practitioner through NAMA. So I'm out on my walk, my morning walk, and getting my sunlight in. And if you're curious about why that's important, if you haven't seen my video, my first video on sunrise and sunset viewing, balancing yin and yang, that's up on the YouTube. And this is going to be kind of an unstructured, impromptu video. You can see Lucy in the background. We're walking on Powell Butte. And I just wanted to talk about it really quick because it came up in clinic the other day, which is the issue of perimenopause and mental health stuff, experiencing extreme anxiety, panic attacks, extreme stress, that can roll in with depression. Another thing that comes up is that women start really feeling like old traumas come up, and then, they end up in therapy, which is great. Hopefully they find a great therapist who works with them. But I just wanted to address that because it's definitely something that I've been managing for the last 2.5 years. Definitely, I've been having perimenopause, what are called perimenopausal symptoms, especially sleep issues for more years, more like since I was 37. And so I just want to, and then the patient that we saw the other day was like, why don't women talk about this? Why didn't they warn us that you were going to hit your late 30s or 40s and just all this shit was going to come up? And then she said also childbirth. Now, I don't have that experience, but apparently I've heard other people complain that there are weird things that happen in childbirth or after becoming a mom that people just don't really warn you about. And I don't know if people have always been quiet about these things or if it's just a sign of our culture. I mean, some people would say maybe it's a sign of the patriarchal culture. But anyway, so I'm riffing and I'm rambling here. But I want to define perimenopause is this period around menopause, right? And when people go through menopause is mysterious. It may be when your eggs run out. I think they're also saying that you can keep having eggs or follicles, which is those are the follicles are where the egg is, and the follicles as they're getting recruited are also what produce your estrogen pre-ovulation and then your progesterone post-ovulation. So it can be anywhere from 35 to 55. It's just the years around menopause. Because a lot of women will then after, maybe they were asymptomatic, but before perimenopause wasn't that big of a deal. But then after menopause, I'm looking at Lucy, she's rolling in something, which is very exciting. Anyway, and then maybe they have more trouble after menopause. They're having hot flashes, or maybe anxiety then. And then that may be when they seek out hormone replacement therapy, things like that, or they come in for acupuncture. And definitely going back towards the mental health aspect of things that we deal with in this age group. As a practitioner, I've had a lot of patients come in and they might be coming in for something like neck pain. And then I look at their supplements and prescription list and I'm like, oh, why are you on atypical antipsychotics? And they're like, oh, I was having a really difficult time in perimenopause. And then I'm like, oh, they're not here for that. And that's not something, obviously I'm going to help treat stress and do the mental health little treatments that we do. But they're not here specifically for that. So I don't go into that with them unless that's something they're looking for, because I'm not going to go digging around into something that somebody's not looking for as help with. So anyway, I just wanted to address this issue of perimenopause and mental health, especially anxiety. But I know for some people they're more prone towards going into depression. And then depression, I always find as a practitioner, I have to actually ask people what that means to them, because for some people it's more just profoundly low energy, and that's really interesting, as opposed to what we would think of depression as this really dark cloud and you're having really negative thoughts, maybe even wondering what it's worth and like suicidal. And certainly that's really intense. And when I encounter patients like that, I'm no longer scared to ask people. I used to, like when I was a student practitioner, I would be scared to ask people about that because I'd be like, oh, there's more information that I can handle. And what am I supposed to do with that? And now I'm not scared to ask people about that because a lot of people, and I can certainly say myself included, have had periods where we think about like, like just, at 4 a.m. and you're like, what's it worth? And you just kind of have this vision of like, I could jump off a bridge or, and so a lot of people will find that they're having those thoughts, and maybe it's even intrusive thoughts, like technically like an OCD kind of thing, what they would say intrusive thoughts are. But it's more like acknowledging, being like, oh yeah, I'm feeling this way and I have no plan. I love life. I want to live. I just want to feel better. And so that's why I'm not scared of asking people that anymore. And that all being said, it can be very serious. I was in a support group for people with anxiety and depression when I first got to Portland with Douglas Block, who makes wonderful videos. I love Douglas. Shout out to Douglas. And we had a young man, he wasn't that young, he was 50, but young, come into the group really at the end of his rope and profoundly depressed and having definitely a very chemical anxiety and depression situation. And after maybe 3 or 4 weeks, he actually committed suicide. And that was, I think, the only time that group, I think maybe there'd been one other time many years ago where somebody had been part of the group and actually was successful at committing suicide. Anyway, so that's a whole nother story, but I can speak from experience of being around when somebody's that profoundly distressed, and it's no laughing matter. But for many people, that feeling, it's more like a wake-up call, or it's your mind, your subconscious saying like something isn't right here and something needs to profoundly change, or I need to change, or like the old me needs to move aside, to figuratively die so that this new person or new self can be born. And that wraps back to the perimenopause situation, which is that a lot of people find that midlife is a profoundly transformative experience. And like I said, hopefully somebody has a practitioner they're working with who is treating it that way. And I would say for those situations, from my own experience, I would highly recommend working with women and older women who have gone through perimenopause, and possibly even who had a similar experience and found ways to work through it. Because I had a wonderful counselor who was a man who I believe was maybe a couple years younger than me, and he was fabulous. He had all sorts of great things going for him, and he was super empathetic, but he was totally not in that space. So it is helpful, and that's why my goal here soon is to start this acupuncture membership in Portland, in the Portland area, where I'm just going to be taking on 10 people a month. And it's called the Calm and Connected Acupuncture Membership. And back when I was in Austin, our favorite thing was that we had this, monthly membership, and it made it a lot easier for us to think about and manage. And I know Kathy Duffy still does that at Rosewood at our practice, my old practice in Austin. And so it's about feeling connected, right? So finding a practitioner who understands what you're going through. And that was what we were able to share with the patient the other day in clinic, was you're in an empathetic space. It'd be empathetic no matter what, like any good practitioner. But I said to her, I'm there, I'm been through that. I understand what you're going through. And I think, to me, in my experience, and it doesn't have to be a woman who's been through perimenopause. I had the most fantastic therapist in Austin right before we left for just a couple of weeks, and he was wonderful. I believe his name was Keith. He was fabulous. He was this old guy, looked kind of like a biker. And what I loved is he was he had struggled. He'd gone to LCSW school late in life, in his 60s, and he had struggled and continued to manage profound depression. And he was kind of hands down the best counselor I've ever encountered. He hadn't been a counselor for a bazillion years. All he had was this profound life experience and just incredible empathy. And so, yeah, it doesn't have to be a woman going through perimenopause, but I think that it can be easier. And that's that part of like why I'm calling my membership the Calm and Connected, because it's like we can all, it's like when we find out like, oh, other people are experiencing this thing, especially like profound anxiety, I've found being able to just, oh, I'm not the only one, because what it is, and this kind of goes to an Ayurveda thing where it's excess vata, which is an excess of the air and ether elements, is lonesomeness or feeling super separate, like just atomized out in outer space by yourself, right? There's the space element. The wind is blowing, the wind, like the solar wind is blowing, and you're just like, you're Pluto out in the outer reaches. And so to find a lifeline when you're really like struggling with anxiety and panic disorder experience, to find people who can say, oh, I've been there, or yes, oh my God, I have that sometimes too. And this is how it's helping me. Just to hear that somebody else is going through that is profound and calming. Like, it's like, it helps you. It's like that minute you have that connection. And then, and then calming, because I mean, unless somebody's like in a complete tizzy, or if somebody is in a tizzy, like even if I'm feeling anxious that day, usually as a practitioner, like I can help ground them out, but the act of helping ground somebody out also grounds me out, and it makes me have to like force, I don't want to use the term force, but I'll use force me to be my best self, to be my grounded self, so that I can be grounding for somebody else. And that's why this kind of thought of like calm and connected came to me, because it's calming and connecting to me to provide that support for somebody else, and then help somebody else feel calm and connected as well. So my arm's getting tired. I'm going to switch arms here. But anyway, I wanted to make this quick video because I just wanted to address like this issue of perimenopause and anxiety and depression, because it's so important and women feel so alone in this. And you're not alone. That's the most important thing. And then what it really comes back to, right? Because then we all end up like, oh, like going to like doctors, and, you know, maybe like I went to, shoot, now I'm going to forget her name. That's another sign of perimenopause is memory stuff. But Tori Hudson, like she's like the best women's health naturopath in the country, maybe in the world. And so I went to her, and really like it was, you know, it wasn't like I was going to get some fancy diagnosis. And then another woman I was seeing, Erica, I'm forgetting her last name too, a little while. And finally she kind of got down to like, we got down to birth control pills. That's a story. And a $500 Dutch test. And I'm like, right, the issue is that my hormones are off and being different and sometimes being fine every month. So if I spend $500 on this Dutch test to do saliva and find out what my hormones are doing, I'm going to find out what my hormones are doing this month. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. What do we circle back to like birth control pills and just stopping periods? Which, you know, if you've dealt with the rigmarole of perimenopause, that may be something you end up trying. I work with women trying to help them get off birth control pills. And let me tell you, I spent 36 days on birth control pills because I was at the end of my rope, and it just did not feel like the right thing for me. So I eventually stopped, and now I just kind of manage. I feel I don't even do all the things I should be doing. And so it's like, it's just a journey. So it's okay to be on the journey. That's another thing I can do, calm and connected to you all, is that it is okay to just be on the journey. But the biggest thing that it all comes back down to is, and I learned this, the profoundness of this, like way back in my earlier 30s from my teacher, Dr. Claudia Welch, who wrote Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life, which she always likes to say was supposed to be called Balance Your Life, Balance Your Hormones, because if you calm vata, then calming vata will get the hormones to start kind of lining back up again. And to just plug sunrise and sunset practice, a big part of balancing your life and balancing vata is balancing the circadian rhythm, which is sunrise and sunset practice. And you know, you just go back and you can read my video, and there's all the links to the reference papers. You can go back and watch Andrew Huberman's Huberman Lab podcast number 2 about sleep. Fantastic, so much information. Like when I was writing a paper using that information, I actually had to go back and just be like I was in class and just take notes the whole time. So I've actually taken the notes on that lecture. So what I want to just circle back to is that the most important thing to remember about perimenopause, like, you know, is we can do all these things. We can, you know, take progesterone. I've done that too. Maybe I'll even go back to Dr. Hudson. I just ran out my prescription, and I was only using it sometimes, like, since I've been doing sunrise and sunset practice, I haven't been needing, my sleep has been getting a lot more ordered. So that's a plug, another plug for sunrise and sunset practice. But to just wrap back is that the most important thing to know about perimenopause is that stress is like one of the biggest killers, right? And so the patient the other day had been re-triggered by a really stressful event, and then remembered that, and it just sent, you know, it triggered all the hormones and all the neurochemicals to go in this really stressful space. So, you know, we can say like, oh, is it kidney, you know, Chinese medicine, is it kidney yin deficiency? Is it vata? Is it liver qi stagnation? Really, in the end, like, the liver does manage the hormone flow, and it has its own circadian clock, but it's governed by the circadian clock. But it really is about stress management. It's like, you can go to school for how many years I've been going to school, and in the end, it really comes back down to stress management. And you may still have anxiety, you may still have panic attacks, but they're most likely going to become less when you focus on stress management. And I know I've read articles, and I can't remember who it was talking about this, probably too many people. But yeah, that it's the number one thing to know is that we become much less resilient to stress during perimenopause, because our hormones, and the thought that I've had, and I need to confirm this with like research or, you know, with an expert, is that as we're kind of grinding along, like through our teens or later 20s and 30s, our hormones are really so strong and so powerful that it takes a lot to knock them off balance. But as things start becoming a little more like less reliable, it's like it has less of this forward momentum, and so things can really knock us off balance much more easily, and stress is the thing that's going to knock us off. You know, obviously, you know, really intense stress, but like, say, not eating enough, or you know, traveling across a bunch of time zones, which deranges the circadian rhythm, obviously. So there we are, back to sunrise and sunset practice. But managing stress. And I would say the other thing that came up in the patient contact the other day is also like, yes, working with a therapist, working on past trauma, going through that. But something that I've also found is that when we're experiencing extreme stress, things that have happened to us in our past, and I've been through this a couple times, where most of the time I don't like, you know, like, yeah, I'm upset. I wish my childhood had been better, you know, or this or that little thing bother me, or I'm like, oh, I need to work through that. But when you're in a state of extreme stress where you're having anxiety and panic attacks, I do want to iterate that little things will seem really, really big and really important, and you will dwell on them and chew on them and spend hours and hours with a therapist working through them. And so while I believe that this is an opening, like we have this, I believe there's neuroplasticity happening when we're in these really open states with the anxiety, with panic attacks and stuff. It's also, I think, probably good to keep in mind that things are going to seem like a really big deal too. And so just keeping that in mind while you're dwelling. There's some people enjoying a meetup here on the path. Anyway, working on stress, coming and getting acupuncture, making sure you are dealing with sleep, because for me, that was the number one thing. And when I started like having really profound anxiety and I had a panic attack that just sent me into a complete tizzy. I started having like really intense like phobias again. This is about 2.5 years ago now. Actually, it's almost 3 years ago. I was at the end of like a number of years of just really poor sleep, and I was being really bad. I was waking up in the middle of the night and then like getting up and reading or looking at my phone, which then that's a whole nother discussion, like messes up your circadian rhythm. And so I think, technically I was getting enough sleep, but like things were really off. And so then I had like some stress in my life, and it just compounded and rolled into like an episode for me that lasted a long time. It's just everything being super off. So really managing stress, like don't be stressed about it, but like protect your stress buffer with your life. Protect your stress buffer with your life, and be gentle about it, and reach out for all the resources you can. But just know that managing stress, and then just knowing too that like this is going to pass, and reach out and get support from like your elders, reach out to the other ladies, reach out to practitioners you like, and then work on feeling calm and connected, like managing stress, finding like some breathing practices have been great, doing things like sunrise and sunset practice, trying not to go down rabbit holes, if there's any ability for you to like manage your workload, so it's not so stressful. Like I know I read an article with a woman who just said, if you can reduce your workload for a period of time, take time off of work. I don't necessarily recommend that, because that's a whole nother story as well. But like just saying like, oh, like I have to kind of downshift for a while, and that will allow me to stay more functional over the long haul. And then you'll be able to crank it back up maybe later on, when you're through this kind of roller coaster. And for some people it's like excess estrogen. For some people, I don't think I'm making too much estrogen, but I know some people do get like the really high estrogen swings. So yeah, staying calm and connected, and just also having that frame of like, this too will pass. So I hope this has been kind of useful for you all. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. You can reach me at vivianlinden@gmail.com right now. My website right now, as of the 3rd of March, is still bardoacupuncture.com. I may be shifting that name just to something simpler, because that's a whole story about being in the Bardo. But definitely, if you don't know what a Bardo is, you can go onto my website, bardoacupuncture.com, and under the About, you can drop down. It's like, what's the Bardo, and why did I name my practice that? But perimenopause is definitely a Bardo space. So there's lots to say about that. But yeah, just I hope this has been useful. If nothing else, I hope it made you feel reassured in some way and calm and connected, just knowing that there are other people out there dealing with the same things you are. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you've gotten this far, I know it's been a bit of a ramble, but I just thought I wanted to share this since it was on the top of my mind. All right. Take care, everyone.